every industry, no matter of what business you are, you've got like 5 pillars, if you will, that you have to think about. And we thought about this because we were getting people from different industries. So we were like, well, what's a framework that's cross industry? And this is something people can take away and how to think about their business.
Episode of the Automate and Grow podcast. My guest today is Sam Ovett, who's pronounces his name like Corvette, as I've been introduced. So that's how I remember it. And Sam has a company called Mobile Pocket Office, and he is, like myself, very heavily in the automation of businesses for clients. So Sam, first of all, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
So what is Mobile Pocket Office?
So Mobile Pocket Office, really simply, we are at its core and simplest is a firm that takes clients through the journey of mapping out and doing the consultative work of understanding what they could automate, and then actually doing on top of that the technical implementation to make that a reality for people. There's a lot that we can get into, but that's the core of what we do here.
Beautiful. And how did you get started with this?
So I got started with this and about 4 or 5 years ago now, and I think it is something like that, like really full on, full serious. I was in the outdoor industry for a little while, professional kayaker, guide, like full-time outside. And then I started as a professional athlete. What I noticed was, okay, I'm a marketing tool, right? Like athletes are marketing tools. You're just on the marketing budget. And, it's fun for me. I get to go play outside every day and do all these amazing things. But really, I'm just part of the marketing plan, and so I started to recognize that, and I started to look at it, and I started to understand that, there is a lot of missed opportunity here because I was learning about automation tools relative to marketing because I was helping be involved in the plans more and more with these companies. And on top of that, when I'll introduce Josh, he's not here with us, but he's my dad, who's my partner in this business. He was always in the business of some kind of automation through software, but more so on the back end of the analytics side of things for a long time. And on the back end of the process side of manufacturing is a lot of what he dealt with, not on the marketing and sales aspect of it as much. And so I was seeing this through the marketing lens, and it initially just happened to start in the outdoor world. And then I wanted to transition out of that. There's not a lot of money in professional whitewater kayaking. There is a whole lot of fun.
You have the limit of you.
Yeah, exactly.
And the kayak.
Exactly. And I funny quick story. I remember being in the airport on the way to Ecuador, and there was a group of folks that were traveling down that were from one of the universities, and the professor said, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm a professional kayaker." At that point, and I had already graduated from college, and I had a degree in science and everything, and didn't have any debt from college, from scholarships. So I was doing my thing. It was great. But he says, "Oh, how do you make a living at that? You can't eat your kayak." And that kind of stuck with me. And the reality is,
says a professor who's like,
yeah, exactly. And so
what do you do again?
Yeah. And so after that sort of ended up, there's a lot of the story there, but I'm not going to go into all the details unless you want. And the idea is that I started seeing these holes in the outdoor industry that I was participating in, and these drop balls. So it's like, oh, you get all these interest, and then you were not following up with people. And so that, and the combo of just being around my dad growing up and him thinking that way in process, made that come to life for me. And for whatever reason, there was a period when it just clicked, and I was like, wow, this technology aspect is amazing. You can use this stuff to really create a way better experience in your business. And so then we started, and so then I got with my dad, and I was like, well, I want to transition out of this outdoor world, basically. And he was like, cool, I'm bored of this, manufacturing process stuff I've done for years. And he was running his own business. He's like, why don't we start a company that's focused on the marketing and sales aspect, because that's where people have the issues up front, and then that flows into all the process work that I already know a lot about that we can then, do. And so we got involved with different software companies that were actually really the tools that people were using for marketing automation. So that's where we started developing our client base around that. So that's how it got started. Like that's the core. But I think the main thing for me, I was like, oh, number one, I want to go win the internet. Like I want to figure out the internet, and
Okay.
I want to go win the internet and like figure out how that works. And I'm still working on that. But the idea was that like there are a lot of missed opportunities out there.
And
And
when you say missed opportunities, like what, first of all, what type of businesses do you typically help?
yeah, so it's interesting. We've ended up with working in the past really 2 years. Our core focus has ended up with businesses that have a large online infrastructure, and they seem to be the most excited to work on this stuff for themselves. And so, someone with like an online course or like some kind of digital product or even physical product that is sold direct to consumer, or a SaaS companies. Those are kind of the big three. And what happens there, those are the industries. But what we see in those industries is like every industry, no matter of what business you are, you've got like 5 pillars, if you will, that you have to think about. And we thought about this because we were getting people from different industries. So we were like, well, what's a framework that's cross industry? And this is something people can take away and how to think about their business. It's like you have to attract business, right? And you have to then convert that interest into leads and sales, right? Then you got to fulfill whatever you promise people, otherwise you'll go out of business real quick. It's fascinating. I think you might be muted, Michael.
It helps if I don't have that off.
and and then after you've fulfilled, that's like most people stop there. They get occasional referrals, but the really good businesses delight their customers. So they go like, you bought this, you might like this pairing that goes with it, right? Or here's another way to use this thing that you bought. Or they keep reminding you to use it so that you actually get a lot of value out of it. And then they have a systematic way to get referrals for business.
Oh, that's interesting.
And
Okay.
and that can be a really personal thing. And so that's like the core. And Mobile Pocket Office, what we decided is, well, we want to take the approach of helping businesses be human where it counts and otherwise automate, right? So everybody starts with automation and they think, well, number one, I've got usually a couple of little things automated. Most people have a few little things automated. They don't even realize it, right? Just stuff that happens. Maybe they bought a system that sends the automatic invoice out when somebody purchased something. Boom, that's a little bit of
That
automation.
makes sense.
And something you don't have to do manually. So the idea is like, you can be human where it counts and otherwise automate. You can be the creative person in your business. You can be thinking about how to grow the business. And the hardest part is that attract phase, right? You got to like, if you can attract that new business, you're the champion. But
That's
if you
true.
don't do the others, then you're quick to go out of business because you don't fulfill your promise, or you have a lot of opportunity to convert more of that business to sales. And so that's like, just if you want to guide in any
Yeah.
direction, let me know. But like,
So
that's
that,
where we start, is we look at the core of what people are doing there and the systems that are there, and then the processes in the systems, and then only then at that point do we get to what could be automated. And then we look at the value of automating things, and that's how you go down the path of automation.
so when someone comes to you or you find a client, are they starting at the point where they're like, hey, I want this plan, I
Yeah.
want this overarching plan, and then to build technology? Or is it more like they're already in business, they're having problems, and they're like, yeah, I'd like to automate things? Like what's the driver that brings people to you?
Yeah, so the driver that we see in our best clients, because we've taken on some people who go like, I'm starting this thing up, I'm pretty smart, I want to make a plan, I want to do this right. But the people who we see the most of and we work with the most are ones who go like, all right, I've got a business, it runs, and usually it's like 500,000 in revenue or more is kind of what I've seen. Below that, you're generally still like adapting a lot of your process and adjusting it, and so it's not really super necessary to automate all of it at that point. and really dive deep on it and spend a lot of money on figuring it out. It's the people. A good example is like our friends Robbie and Cyrus over at masteringdiabetes.org. They have online courses, they have in-person events, they're putting on webinars, they have like guides that people can buy, and they help people work through their diabetes. They're both type 1 diabetics, super fit. They manage their diabetes, and it's all about diet primarily, to manage your insulin and blood glucose levels. And these guys came to us, and they had like 64 different tools that ran their business, tech tools, right? We talk a lot about the tech tools, and we like all of them, from all the marketing, yeah, and like all the marketing to the email stuff to all the way through to their finance stuff, right? So it's just like tons of tools. And they were doing all this manual moving of data, and they were really good at attracting new people to their site. That was not a problem.
Wow.
And they were good at like their organic content. They wanted to get into more advertising so they could scale even more. But these guys were doing, over $500,000 in revenue on an annual basis. And like that meant a lot of interest and people coming through. And what they found is they had the feeling that, number one, we have to either hire more people to handle these manual processes that we do between the different steps, and we'd like to convert more of the business that we have, and can we use automation to handle that? Because we're getting 300 new leads a day. Like we can't.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So like that's the type of business that is a great candidate. They're really good at generating business, and they even know how to close and sell their stuff. I think that's very important, whatever it is. And they know who their audience is. Everybody can grow and like find more people, but they were good. They were a sustained business with a team of people, but their problem was to do more. They had to hire more people, right? And they just rolled out a New York Times bestseller. They went through that whole process. They wrote their book, and that was their challenge, was like, well, how do we convert this interest and also handle the back end process so we don't have to hire more people? Because I think one of the things that automation does for you, if you use it right, is when you have an issue and you're weighing the scales of justice. Do I hire more people, or do I pay and do some automation, right? Well, if you hire people in a role that's not super creative and not helping you grow, but just something you have to do, that's cool. But you got to pay that person continuously forever. And people usually want more money, which is reasonable to expect. And they probably deserve it because they're helping you. And and then the other side of it is, and they may take vacations. Of course they should. Right? They should take time off, all these things. And so if you have parts of the business that are automated and keep filling up that process where the person has to handle it, if you don't have automation to move people to that next step in your business and handle it automatically and all the scenarios that could occur, now you're stuck continuously paying someone. It's hard to let people go. You don't want to do that. And they're not always a fit for a more creative role. Or you could invest in automation to handle those pieces of the process and think through it. And now you've made that investment once, and it's probably good for at least 5 years, until technology makes a shift where you want to make adjustments, right? Something of that type.
So I find your approach is really consistent with what I try to talk about. And in Automate and Grow the book, when you keep hitting on this point that I think is important to emphasize. What do you automate? And I think
what do you automate? Yeah, totally.
And I think what you keep highlighting is letting people do their highest value work, it sounds like.
That's absolutely right, because that's like, number one, that's more fun,
right,
to work with people. and it's tough, right? It's a tough conversation in just like as a whole, as a society, right? Like, oh, well, when we use automation, jobs go away. You know what? It's true. Jobs go away, but other jobs open up that are more creative.
Probably better jobs.
Higher paying. And then somebody's still got to like tweak the automation to make it work better, and improve it over time.
That makes total sense to me. That makes a lot. Like, so for
Yeah,
example, I think we get this fear mongering around automation, and you get these old kind of like, how do you put it? Luddite views of
yeah.
technology because it's uncertain. It's
It's
scary
uncertain.
for
Yeah,
people, right?
yeah,
And they don't, rather than work to understand, it's just easy to demonize it. It's like, you're
totally.
taking
Yep.
jobs, and it's like, union, let's
And you see
band
it in like,
together.
in fact, in like the factory
The
mindset, right?
factory
Like,
mentality,
oh,
right?
there's a robot now. It took my
Uh,
job. Well, guess what? The
Good.
same job that has to manage all the programming of the robot and like keep that robot up to speed and make it do new things. That job is way more creative, way higher paying, and way more
Right.
mentally engaging. Does everybody want that job? Of course, that's the challenge, right? And that's like this discussion nationally and globally, like, well,
For
how do
sure.
people get reskilled? But ultimately, from a business owner standpoint, you know, it's definitely like way more efficient, way more reliable, um, and if it's done in the right way, then it's something that people don't necessarily notice. They just get a better experience.
Right.
Whereas there's the opposite side of automation that creates terrible experiences.
Which
Like
we see in chatbots, which we see in call centers. Like, it's
yeah,
usually, stuff where it's not elegant. And obviously the technology is not perfect and some are better than others. But I think, to your point, that is really important is, if you're out there and you're trying to deal with the complexity, what I'm hearing from Sam and what I keep trying to tell people is, actually the best example I use in the book is from Dan Sullivan. And Dan says, listen, every 90 days, and you can do this as an individual or a business owner, you make 3 lists. And the first list is all the stuff that's repetitive, but not important. That
mm-hmm,
stuff you try to eliminate. And the second
yes,
list is stuff that's repetitive, but it's important. And that's the stuff you try to find a tool for, or automate, or delegate. And
that's
then the
right.
final list is one you're talking about, which I think is really important, which is, what's the stuff that inspires you and is your highest value work? And that's where you want to spend most of your time. And so I love your approach, which is, identify that, automate the stuff that matters, but isn't necessarily the best use of a human's time,
Yeah,
right?
like I have to do it to run the business.
I have
Otherwise,
to
I
do it.
can't run the business. That's like the busy work of business.
Worst.
But
I
but
mean, I don't
it
know about you. I'm a master procrastinator on stuff like that.
totally, yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of people are because not everybody. They're like my wife. She's like incredible at stuff. Like she can just knock it out and then also do the creative stuff. But like
Yeah.
the the boring stuff is just boring and it's not fun and it's repetitive.
Totally.
But like, if you don't do it, that's a fast way to tank your business, right?
Right. And I think that's
And
the
that's the
challenge,
stuff that
right?
you want to automate.
Totally, because I have a black belt in procrastination, right? And I'm like surgical about how I can put stuff like that off and make excuses in my brain. And who do I answer to? It's like, it's a client. But if I'm good at getting clients, then
I just get another one.
yeah, almost. And that's cynical, but sadly, it's
Yeah,
sometimes how it works, right? Where you're like, panic, I gotta find more stuff because I didn't, it didn't
yeah,
quite work out. I think what your approach is, listen, deal with your digital product or
yeah.
automation of your product, use tools for
Yep,
that, making sure that it's consistent. So that's really
that's right.
important. And then automate marketing, sales, and support, which is what we talk about in Automate and
Yeah.
Grow. So it's like, it makes total sense.
And then if you like want to do a crazy, unique marketing campaign, like that's where the creative work comes in. If you want to improve the product, that's where the creative work comes in.
Makes
If you
sense.
want to improve the automation, and this is something I don't think gets talked about enough, and something we really hammer home with people we work with is like track your automation. So if you are doing automation to either improve the efficiency of process, number one, track it. Is it actually improving it? Number two, and this is related to the customer experience side of it, not the internal business process side of it, is it, and I'll give you an example. There's this company that we worked with. They make a connector that like connects a bunch of e-commerce stores to QuickBooks, so you could get all your transactions and manage your inventory and
Oh, okay, interesting.
use a lot of um, challenges with your finances, right? Your bookkeeping around that. They were like primarily a engineering team with some customer support people, and their product was so good that like they didn't have a hard time selling it when somebody actually had the issue, right? Like I need to manage these, and it's the easiest one out there to date. But they wanted to create a better customer experience because largely their customer experience on the marketing and sales side was like we have this thing. Do you want it? Buy it or go away. Like, we don't have anything else to
Yeah.
follow up with you
It's not
or like
unusual. That's
teach you
probably,
about it, because we're like very engineering focused and we didn't have a lot of marketing to share all the scenarios and case studies and examples. So they were like doing webinars every few weeks, and it was mostly their customer service team was like doing a live webinar, and like maybe people would show up, maybe they wouldn't. It was at like random times and it wasn't super consistent. And of course, if you have the problem, like you kind of want to go learn about it as quick as you can because you're trying to make a decision. So we did we did a lot for them, but one of the things we did was just we helped them with the actually execute on the creative work of like they did the webinar, right? So we like made sure they got this webinar done that like told the story, right? And helped sell the product in the sense that like explained what the problem was so that it was very clear if you had it that this was a great tool for it. And then we automated it and made it a webinar that you could attend, a recorded webinar that you could attend at any time. And then it had automatic follow-up, if you registered but didn't attend, and made sure that you could get a free trial. And now they went from, I think they were getting like 25 to 100 people in any one of these given live webinars, right? Every 3 to 6 weeks, depending on if they got busy with customer service.
how are they bringing people to that webinar?
So I'll get to that, but like yeah. So like they then have this now automated webinar, which people have heard of before. It's not like the newest thing, if you've hung out in the automation world.
Yep.
And automated follow-up that lasted, that helped, go through the different scenarios that someone who is interested in the product would encounter. And now they had like 100 people every 2 to 3 weeks attending this thing versus 25, maybe 100 every 3 to 6 weeks. The way they got business, they didn't actually have to do a lot of advertising because they were, and this is a cool thing, if you're an app, right, or a SaaS product, they were in a lot of the marketplaces for the e-commerce stores. So people would like, if you had a Shopify store, you'd click through and you'd be like, I need to connect this to QuickBooks, and you'd see them and you'd go to their website and then you were there, and the only thing you could do was like get a free trial, but you weren't sure if this even solved your problem. So you're like, I don't even know if I want to like go through all the work for a free trial. So you could now watch a webinar, pretty much on demand and find out if that was something of interest. And so for them, now they actually started to do advertising because they had something that people could learn about the product through. And it was, it's obviously something that was very successful for them in this situation. It happened to be. Things aren't always successful when you do these kind of things, but they have a great product. So their fulfillment was like,
so they have a digital product, and then they have a digital marketing and sales process that
exactly. And so like, and now they didn't have to like, because they were thinking like, do we hire business development people? What do we do? Because they had this issue of, well, we want to sell more, but we don't know how. Well, let's start with making it easy for people to learn about you in an automated way.
That's a great case study, and it's definitely the nirvana. So
yeah. And then there's one more thing there is that now it was like we gave them the visuals to look at the metrics for it. So it was like if people came in from certain sources, right, different e-commerce sources where they like click through, find out if those people who watch the webinar actually convert to customers. Like how many people come, attend, watch, take you up on the free trial, and then become a customer, and at what level of the package, so that you know which stores are bringing your highest value customers to you.
I love it. That is my question, actually, because I was going to ask you, when they set that up, then how did they manage it? So, and
then that's like the idea is now put a human behind improving that thing. Split test it, do 2, and see which one works better.
The machine that you're.
That's right.
You just built the machine. I love it.
You just built the machine. Now try and make the machine work better for you. And like this is missed, I think, all the time, is like make a baseline that is working for you, and then have a B, your A and your B, and then try and improve the worst performing one until it beats the best performing one, and then do the same thing. And now you're always improving, because I see a lot of people go, we want to automate and like change all this manual stuff we do. And then they do that and people are like, hey, the experience sucks now. I'm going away to somebody else. Like this is no longer what it was. and then you're like, hey, we automated everything, and it's like, yeah, and you tanked your business too. Like,
well, I think the other thing that, what I am hearing is find incremental wins, because I
find
think a lot of
incremental,
people sit there building the machine, not knowing, not having the leads coming in already, right? So it's almost like
totally.
they had the problem of, we're getting a lot of attention, we're getting a lot of interest, and then they created the machine to do something with it, to
Yeah.
answer
Versus
questions that
like
people are searching for and then convert them
build the machine
and hope.
and then hope your marketing works. Like, yes, you need a little bit of the
Yeah,
machine to work,
for
right?
sure.
Like you need a little bit, but like don't spend so much time on the machine that's after the marketing. Figure out the marketing and then like do whatever manual stuff you need to do until you have an actual problem with fulfillment and you're getting close to that. And now work on that next problem. If like you see those guys at like the state fair or whatever, the clowns who are like spinning balloons, and it's like they put air in the balloon and then they like spin part of this. This is from my dad. This is
Yeah,
he
make
always used
balloon animals.
balloon animals. And so like you start with one and you spin like the end, and now the air didn't go out, it
Just
just
move.
it moved. So like that's do automation that way. Give yourself a problem that moves downstream and then fix it, and then fix that, and then fix that, and then fix that. And it
That,
kind of works in that order. Fix your attract problem. If you haven't gotten that fixed, you're gonna be quickly not stoked to spend money on automating and thinking about that because you don't even have anything to automate. And then once you fix that problem, then fix your convert problem, right? Like get that working better. Those kind of go together. And then fix your fulfill problem. So that's super dialed. Don't let that get bad at any point because that'll impact people's word of mouth. But then you can automate more of that. Then fix your delight problem. How can you get people to get more out of it? How can you offer more things that go with it, right? If you sell t-shirts, maybe you want to offer a complimentary brand shoes, and then you get a little more average transaction value and you make more profit, like that's an example. And then once you've done that, then make sure that you're asking people for referrals. If they're naturally referring people, that's a good sign. Now, make sure that you never forget to ask for a referral. And if somebody had a bad experience, that's part of asking for referrals because you want to catch that bad experience and make it right before you were ever to ask them for a referral, right? And that person, if maybe you hiccuped on something, and they had a bad experience, that could be your best referring person if you made it right for them.
I love it. That's a great approach. It's consistent with what we try to help people with. And I think you had a couple other interesting components there. Can you just hold on 1 second? Sorry,
Yeah.
I'll cut this part out.
Okay.
Sorry about that. The joys of working at home.
No worries.
Um, okay, so I love your approach. You hit on all the different aspects of the business. I notice on your site, I think you have Ontraport as a tool that you use. Is that a platform that you consistently use, or what's one tool that you would recommend to people, or a platform that you think is really useful to accomplish everything you just discussed?
Yeah. So, and you're right. We're pretty psyched on Ontraport, and that's a particular automation tool that people can use. And generally, you need a couple of tools to pull things off. You know, um, but what we really like to do with folks is encourage and sometimes push very heavily that you want to keep your data in one spot, because if you can slice and dice and manipulate your data and very easily see what's going on, you can make clearer decisions faster and make changes faster and know what's going on. As soon as you add many tools into the mix and lots of what we call point source solutions, and you've seen those. Hey, there's always this one tool that does like everything perfectly,
One
but it
thing,
doesn't connect to anything else,
which is useless.
which is useless, right? And that's how a lot of people start. They go like, "Oh, I just need to do this one thing, and then I want to add this thing," and then that's how you end up with 64 different tools or whatever to power your business.
Totally.
Now you are converting. You are running a business, but you're moving data around. You're importing, exporting, boom, 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 boom,
That's so good. Yeah.
updating. And then you got to like hire people, and you got more 300 leads a day, let's say, like these guys at Mastering Diabetes, Cyrus and Ravi. And like that is a lot of work. And that is guaranteed way to drop balls in the customer journey and forget about people accidentally. And so that is why we encourage people to look at a tool that allows them to put all their data in one spot, or connect different unique solutions to that where the data can flow through. With also, and this is the key, it needs to have great customer service, because in technology, things break. They don't always work. And you need to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, why is this function not working as I thought it would be? That's responsive, is going to fix it. And so that's what we look for in tools that we use. And Ontraport happens to be the one that we use as a core automation tool a lot of times. It's not always a fit, and if it's not, we won't use it. But that's why we put some, we go, we like this one. We use it. We eat our own dog.
So it's kind of like your CRM, but also your marketing automation,
That's
any
right.
stuff around marketing, like landing pages, maybe, or email campaigns.
Yep.
And that's a well-known tool. I think Eben Pagan actually is an investor in that company. I don't know if you know Eben, but
Well, I know
something else before, right? It was like
they were called Office Autopilot, and I know they don't have they're privately owned still.
Yeah, I think he put money into it privately a long time ago.
Okay, that could be. I'm not
He got them
sure.
to rebrand to Ontraport. I remember him telling me that.
Is that right? Well,
Yeah.
then you're probably right. Yeah.
Yeah, must be a
So
secret.
there's an inside that I don't, but now everybody knows.
Yes, yeah, it was just a
Yeah.
conversation we had about it. It was like,
But that's why we are excited about that one. There's others out there. That one works for a lot of people, for a lot of industries, pretty darn amazingly.
I love it. Well, listen, I want to be conscious of your time. So
Sure.
I'm going to wrap with a couple things. First of all, I want to acknowledge you for, the leadership you show in this area and helping companies to automate the things that are important but repetitive, and to free people's time for their highest value work. First of all, how do people get in touch with you?
So people can go to our website, mobilepocketoffice.com. But then if you'd like, I'd be happy to, I don't know if you put stuff in the show notes.
Sure.
We can make a unique link, mobilepocketoffice.com / what should we name it? What's unique that would make sense to the audience? Just the name of the podcast?
Grow.
Yeah, Automate, Grow.
Yep.
And then we'll put some resources about those 5 pillars, and then like how to think about automation that are free, people can get. And then that way you can get started with thinking about what should you automate in your business, and what's the highest value thing that you can automate first.
I love it. That's super useful.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, like that thing people said, is this idea of, well, how do I figure out what my processes are today if I don't even know? And we got a little simple worksheet. You print it out, analog style. Write stuff down, and it works amazingly to like figure out, what do you actually do in your business?
I love
what
it.
do the other
That's a
people
great
that you hire actually do?
All right, so we'll include that in the show notes, which will be mobilepocketoffice.com /automate grow.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple of quick things. First of all, if you could recommend only one book to the people, what book would you recommend?
One book
in the world, in the universe, about anything.
Man. Wow, that's pretty. This is a cliche one, but like that the Dale Carnegie How to Win Friends and Influence People was influential to me early on. And then another one that I learned, this has nothing to do with automation, but
that's all right.
That I recently listened to on an audiobook that I found to be very useful, was a book on negotiation. And it's kind of the opposite of this whole idea of getting people to say yes. It's getting people to say no first, by this guy, Chris Voss, who is an FBI negotiator. I think he's been promoting
Chris
it lately.
Voss, I met through an event.
Did you meet him?
Well, yeah, and he was supposed to do the podcast. So Chris, I don't know what happened, but
I read that. I just recently read that book, and I think that that can influence the way people think about their marketing, the way people think about their sales, the way people think about the way they do business. And um, I think it's different than most of the, just drive people to a yes
Yeah,
decision.
he's a master FBI negotiator, and he
That's right.
also has an incredible. If you ever seen masterclass.com,
That's
uh,
right.
he's got one of the most popular master classes. It's very good actually. So
Have you
most
watched it?
people,
I haven't watched that one,
it's
but
excellent. Yeah, master classes
yeah,
the whatever I spent on 180
yeah,
bucks for the year, and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
funny because they gave me
I have it. I should
free.
go look at it because I
You
have
should look
the.
at it. There's some
I
bunch of
got
really
I got
great ones.
master class for training our dog. Somebody had a master class on dog training.
There's a great dog one on there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I watched a little bit of that. I should watch more. I have a husky, so I'm skeptical, but okay. Who if sorry, Jim
That's
Rohn
okay.
says that you were the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So who do you, Sam, spend the most time
I spend the most time with my wife, my brother, who lives over here too in Colorado with us, and my dad, and then so that's three, and then I, my mom as well, because we're always talking to her, and the fifth person, who is the fifth person? I'm like, there's not a consistent fifth person in there,
with? That's all right.
but
That's who you spend the most time with.
that's who I spend the most time with. And I think it's absolutely true. Uh, and I've noticed that if I want to get better at something, I just try and spend time with someone who's already really good at it.
That
And that
makes no
is,
sense.
and then I just like level up way faster. Like I recently have been improving my ability to rock climb, right? Like this
Oh yeah.
non-business
And you
example.
mentioned that you created a rock climbing gym in a
Yeah.
container.
Yeah. We have a shipping container on our acre of property here, and we built like a full. You can go in and boulder and like get a
Oh,
workout
very
in
interesting. I'll have to see
super
that. You have to
easily.
send me pictures. We'll include
I'll
them.
send you pictures. Yeah. And like the walls are now adjustable at different angles. And so we want to get better. So we started hanging out with a friend of ours who's climbed the climbs that we'd like to do in the future that are bigger, harder, and the level up and like his knowledge of just the athletic requirements to meet it and how to actually get there, not just like theory, but like how to actually do it, has improved my climbing dramatically through that period of hanging out with him. So I think, and I try to do the same in business too. Anything I want to get better at, I just like hang out with people who are leaps and bounds better because they've already been there and they
That
know
makes
what to do.
total
They
sense.
know what to do.
Um, Final thing is, or final two things, how are you, Sam, changing the world?
How am I changing the world? I would like to think, you know, that with what we're doing with the automation side of things, uh, it's not this big touch everybody thing. It's like one person at a time. Number one, it's like working on our own, right? The whole like Confucius idea that clean off the snow on your own doorstep before you complain about the snow on your neighbors.
There you go.
So like I think it starts just like that, and then the other is from what we do is like we do want to see people be more human with what they do, and then relieve the time of automation, and hopefully for these individual business owners, what we found is like we're trying to give them their not only like, oh, be way more productive, be way more efficient, but like give them time back to work with their family, to be with their families and their loved ones and like do the things that they want to do, right? And
Love it.
so if you automate things and like, hey, you can do your creative work, and then of course, these people work very hard who are very successful that we work with, but a lot of them have gotten a lot of time back in their day, just to do whatever they choose to do with that time. And I think that feels more than anything like you're changing the world to
That is
me.
that I agree with you. That's a,
I can't say that we're making grand changes,
but
like
those are
because we're
big
not,
enough.
but we're just making changes that are unique and matter to those people. And then like we try to do the same with ourselves, like try and make it so we can spend time, like I can spend time with my wife, and you know I work with my dad, so I talk to him all the time. But I think that is it, just like just here with ourselves. We also do a lot of stuff in our community, and I think that feels really good.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, the final thing is when we have interesting people on the podcast, we like you to nominate other interesting people that you know. We typically talk to experts or entrepreneurs about the person they serve and problems that they solve. So who would you, Sam, like to nominate as a future guest on Automate and Grow?
You know who's someone that I just get a lot of joy out of chatting with? It's someone who's similarly, I could think of actually a lot of people, but it's someone who's similarly in the automation world, funnily enough. So whether that's interesting or not is up
It
to
is.
you.
That's the
But
whole point of the show.
yeah, there's two actually people
Either
that come to
automate
mind.
or grow. It could be grow
Yeah,
in different ways, but
one of them is this gentleman, Andrew Wadsworth, and he's down in Australia. And he is just a joy to talk to and so down to earth and so committed to what he does in his community, but also from a technology standpoint, I think he's one of the people who really gets the challenges that businesses face of all different scales and um, makes it really digestible and in a way that you go, I get it. I know what you should do. Like I can help you through that problem. And he's fun to talk to, and he's got a super awesome Australian accent.
there you go.
And then the other would be, I'll give you two. I know you asked
Yeah,
for
do
one,
it.
but I'll give you two. Is Alan Morte from Three Ventures. And Alan is the only person I know who I would reliably recommend someone to do search advertising with.
Okay.
And he's got some of the biggest brands in the world that he does advertising through, and his knowledge of the search advertising space and just really understanding it is changes the game. He's a mathematician around it versus this wild marketer that kind of scares you. You're like, I'm gonna
Yeah,
hand over money and maybe lose it all. He's like, no, we can do this like through math.
I love it. Those are two amazing. So
And I
Andrew
can connect you with
Wadsworth.
those folks
Yeah,
as
that'd be
well.
great. So Andrew Wadsworth and Alan Morte, you've
Alan
both
Morte.
both been nominated by Sam to be a future guest of Automate and Grow. I want to mention one thing, which is on November the 18th. I don't know when this will air, but November the 18th, I have a new venture called Founders Pack, and it's on a mission to help 1 million entrepreneurs in some way in their startup journey to start up and grow. And we're having our first online pitch event. And we have 3 pretty stellar judges, which we have David Meltzer, Arabian Prince, who's a VC and formerly a founder of NWA. And we have Roger King of Bay Angels. And we are on the lookout for 3 more startups that want to pitch in a winner takes all startup pitch event. So I want to invite you as a guest to watch the event on November the 18th at 12 noon Pacific time. And if you know any startups, we would love to talk to them. All right, Sam, thank you so much for taking your time today and sharing your knowledge with us.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
this has been another episode of the Automate and Grow podcast. We will see you on a future episode, hopefully with Andrew, and then another one with Alan of
Yeah,
Automate and Grow.
cool.